The United States military has confirmed a series of 15 targeted strikes that have resulted in the deaths of 64 individuals and the destruction of 16 boats. These operations are part of an ongoing campaign that Washington says is aimed at disrupting and curtailing the flow of illegal narcotics into the United States. Officials say the campaign is focused on the maritime routes frequently used by organized drug trafficking networks, operating between Latin America, the Caribbean, and North America. The US government has described the strikes as a necessary step to combat what it calls a persistent and evolving threat to national security. According to military sources, the targets were vessels suspected of being used for the transportation of drugs, weapons, and contraband materials across international waters. 3 survivors were reported from these incidents, 2 of whom were briefly detained by the US Navy before being repatriated to their home countries. The 3rd survivor was reportedly rescued by a nearby commercial vessel before being transferred to authorities for medical treatment and questioning. The timeline of these operations spans several months, with the first strike taking place in international waters off the coast of Central America. Subsequent strikes were reported in areas near the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Department of Defense stated that each operation was conducted following intelligence assessments and surveillance confirming the involvement of the targeted vessels in narcotics smuggling. Officials emphasized that the actions were coordinated with partner nations and regional law enforcement agencies to ensure accuracy and minimize collateral damage. Military spokespeople also highlighted that no U.S. personnel were injured during the missions, and all engagements were carried out in accordance with international maritime law. In Washington, defense analysts have noted that these operations mark an expansion of U.S. counter-narcotics efforts that have historically included cooperation with nations such as Colombia, Mexico, and Panama. The Pentagon has not disclosed the specific identities or nationalities of those killed, citing ongoing investigations and coordination with foreign governments. However, regional media outlets have reported that many of the destroyed vessels were operating under flags of convenience, making identification of ownership and crew more complex. The U.S. military says the campaign is part of a broader initiative to weaken transnational criminal organizations that generate billions of dollars annually from drug trafficking. Officials claim that by targeting maritime logistics, the operations aim to disrupt supply chains before the narcotics reach land. The campaign has reportedly focused on fast-moving vessels, often referred to as go-fast boats, which are capable of traveling long distances at high speeds and are difficult to detect. According to intelligence reports, these boats are commonly used to transport cocaine and other illegal substances from South America to Central America and then onward to the United States. While Washington has defended the strikes as lawful and necessary, human rights organizations and some foreign governments have expressed concern over the number of fatalities and the potential lack of transparency in the decision-making process. Critics argue that the use of lethal force in maritime operations raises questions about proportionality and accountability. Several advocacy groups have called for an independent review to determine whether all those killed were involved in illicit activities. The Pentagon has responded by saying that all operations were conducted under clear rules of engagement and that the military made extensive efforts to verify targets before striking. Reports from regional news outlets suggest that the strikes have significantly reduced the number of small craft operating along known drug routes. However, analysts caution that the long-term impact of such operations remains uncertain. as drug trafficking organizations have historically adapted quickly to new enforcement strategies. Some experts believe the campaign may temporarily disrupt smuggling routes, but will not eliminate the underlying demand that drives the drug trade. Others argue that the US approach reflects a growing reliance on military force to address what is fundamentally a law enforcement challenge. Internationally, reaction to the strikes has been mixed. Governments in Central America and the Caribbean have expressed cautious support, noting that narcotics trafficking has destabilized their regions for decades. However, they have also urged the United States to provide greater transparency and coordination, especially in cases where strikes occur close to their territorial waters. The Organization of American States has called for enhanced cooperation on maritime security, emphasizing the need for joint intelligence sharing and capacity building rather than unilateral military actions. In response to these concerns, US defense officials have reiterated that the operations were carried out in international waters and that all necessary precautions were taken to avoid civilian casualties. They stated that the United States remains committed to supporting regional partners in the fight against drug trafficking through training, intelligence sharing, and humanitarian assistance when needed. Officials also said the campaign reflects a broader shift toward proactive interdiction, where suspected smuggling vessels are intercepted and neutralized before they can reach coastal regions. Satellite imagery and surveillance data released by the Pentagon show several of the destroyed vessels engulfed in flames after being hit. The US Navy has described the strikes as precise and controlled, involving the use of aerial drones and naval aircraft to identify and engage targets. Each mission reportedly underwent multiple layers of authorization before approval. In one incident, officials said a drone monitored a vessel for more than 6 hours before the decision was made to strike, following confirmation that the boat was carrying illicit cargo. The operations have also highlighted the increasing role of advanced technology in maritime security. The US military has used unmanned systems, satellite tracking, and artificial intelligence to analyze patterns of movement across key maritime corridors. Analysts say this represents a shift toward a more data-driven approach to counter narcotics missions, reducing the risk to personnel while increasing operational reach. Despite these technological advances, questions remain about the accuracy of intelligence and the potential for mistaken targeting. Domestically, the operations have drawn mixed reactions from lawmakers. Some members of Congress have praised the military for taking decisive action against drug traffickers, arguing that the measures help protect American communities from the consequences of illegal narcotics. Others have urged greater oversight and transparency, warning that such actions could set a precedent for the use of military force outside traditional conflict zones. The White House has said that the operations were conducted in line with existing counter-narcotics authorities, and that they form part of a comprehensive strategy combining enforcement, prevention, and international cooperation. As investigations continue, the Pentagon says it is working closely with the Department of State and partner governments to verify the identities of the deceased and assess the broader impact of the campaign. Officials have not indicated whether additional strikes are planned, but stated that the United States will continue to monitor maritime trafficking routes closely. Analysts believe further operations are likely if intelligence indicates continued activity by smuggling networks in the region. Observers note that these events come amid a broader debate about the effectiveness of militarized approaches to the global drug trade. Some experts argue that decades of enforcement have failed to reduce overall supply or demand, while others maintain that aggressive interdiction remains a vital component of border security. For now, U.S. officials insist that the recent strikes represent a necessary and proportionate response to a persistent international threat. The situation continues to develop as international agencies and governments await further clarification from Washington.